घटनाचक्र में एक बार आपका फिर से स्वागत है। हम बात करेंगे तिब्बत को लेकर लगातार 1959 से लेके अब तक तिब्बत का जो संघर्ष है, दुनिया के कई संघर्ष में से एक महत्वपूर्ण संघर्ष है। और इस वक्त हमारे साथ स्टूडियो में बहुत ही खास मेहमान हैं, वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट गेस्ट टुनाइट, दैट इज डॉक्टर Lobsang Sangay. He is the elected political leader of Tibetans government in exile. Jain, we are very happy to find you in studio, sir. This is the first time we have heard this is a 4-day. It's a campaign designed to get the attention or highlight certain issues which the Tibetans have been fighting for so long. So first thing, what is this Tibetan People's Solidarity campaign that you have started?
We have launched this Tibet Solidarity campaign, or Solidarity with Tibet campaign, to create awareness about what is happening inside Tibet. You might have heard that 99 Tibetans have self-immolated,
yes,
of which 83 have died. And the sufferings that Tibetans are undergoing, we want the international community to know and press the Chinese government that the continuing occupation and repression is not helpful for them and for the Tibetan people, and we ought to find a solution through dialogue. So that is the main agenda. We want the United Nations to visit Tibet. We want international delegations to visit Tibet. We want parliamentarians and diplomats to visit Tibet, because the present situation is unacceptable and we have to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully.
There is a selection of the venue, I mean the place, New Delhi. You have chosen to start this campaign. So why have you chosen New Delhi to be the the center, the venue for the campaign?
On December 10th, that is Human Rights Day,
yeah,
we launched the Tibet Solidarity with Tibet campaign. The first event we had was in New York, where a large number of Tibetans came in, gathered, and had one of the largest protests in this city of New York in the US. Now we chose New Delhi, so that again another city, another capital city of India. Then February 11th is our Tibetan New Year, and I have called on Tibetans not to celebrate our New Year because so many Tibetans are dying. So in condolences to all those Tibetans and in solidarity with those Tibetans inside Tibet, we are not celebrating Tibetan New Year on February 11th. Again, there will be some form of protest all over the world. And on March 10th of this year, we'll have one of the biggest protests in Brussels in front of the European Parliament. So these are the cities and towns we have chosen throughout 2013, yes, throughout 2013 and throughout the world, in different places. So Delhi happens to be one more city.
Yeah, Delhi. There's a the whole campaign. The key issue, which seems to be coming in right now, everybody's concern is the self-immolation by the Tibetan people. And why do we have such drastic, extreme actions being taken by the people?
It's unfortunate that 99 Tibetans have self-immolated, and of which 83 have died. And that it is covered in the media, but not much is known.
Yeah.
Hence, why they are committing self-immolation? The direct reason is the repression of the Tibetan people by the government of People's Republic of China. Policies are very harsh at the moment in Tibet. Foreign tourists are not allowed to go. Journalists are not allowed to go. Hence, they have shut down the whole of Tibet. Now, rest of the world don't know what is happening inside Tibet. If you go to Lhasa, the capital city, reports are that every 20 or 30 meters there are some checkpoint where normally when it takes 5 minutes to go do some shopping, it takes about half an hour. Such repressive policy, such restrictions are imposed. So Tibetans are saying the situation is unbearable it's better to die than leave. Hence, they are committing self-immolation. So, the blame for self-immolation and the solution for self-immolation lies with the government in Beijing. If they end repression and introduce reforms, self-immolation will decrease or even end.
But do you think the Chinese authorities or the government are totally unaware of the fact that so many people have been doing self-immolation and doing nothing in terms of
Unfortunately, they know the self-immolation is taking place. They know a lot of Tibetans are dying. But they choose to impose more harsher policies than lift restrictions and give freedom to Tibetan people. And the universal slogans of self-immolators are: one, they want to see the return of His Holiness Dalai Lama to Tibet. They want freedom for Tibetans. These are their universal demand and basic aspirations with Tibetan people. Now, instead of listening to these aspirations of the Tibetan people, the Chinese government is imposing more control over Tibetan people.
What is the stand of the central Tibetan administration on this self-immolation?
Now, our stand is very clear. We discourage drastic actions. We discourage self-immolations by Tibetans, because life is precious. One should live. But it continues to take place. Then what do? What we say is, it is our job, it is our responsibility to magnify why they are committing such act, and their demands or their aspirations are return of His Holiness Dalai Lama to Tibet and freedom of Tibetans. So we don't support the action of self-immolation, but we support the aspiration of Tibetan people.
But we also see, when we see the list of 99 people self-immolating, it's a huge and long list, and it also concerns the entire, concerned and other people who are concerned about the human rights across the globe. However, when we see that not much attention is given to this particular issue in Tibet, what do you think is the reason? What are the reasons why why not proper attention is being provided to the same?
Now, the attention is given. The major news media like BBC, CNN, and New York Times all have covered the issue. But then more needs to be done. We have resolutions passed by the US Senate, European Parliament, French Parliament, Italian Parliament, including actually many members of the Japanese Parliament also expressed their support for the Tibetan people. Having said that, what we really want to see is concrete actions by the international community to press on the Chinese government that the present situation is not working, so they have to find a peaceful solution to the issue.
But when we talk about this immolation, not much, though this has been reported in India as well. But I would like especially to how the Indian Parliament, Indian parliamentarians or the Indian parties reacted to this. Have they?
Yes, I think several Indian members of the Parliament have spoken out on the issue. Yaswant Sinha ji has spoken out on the issue. Today only former Deputy Prime Minister of India, L.K. Advani ji, came to the Tibetan solidarity campaign and spoke out on the issue. And Priya Dutt ji from the Congress party, actually the ruling party, also came to support the issue of Tibet. And a member of parliament from Tamil Nadu, Sudaranchan, I think, came also and spoke in support of the Tibetan people. So did the National Conference member from Jammu and Kashmir also came out in support of the issue. So in that sense, in India also, the people in the media and in the leadership has spoken out in support of the issue. But by and large, actually, India has done the most for Tibetans. The largest number of Tibetans are in India.
Yeah. But what are you doing to correct or bring focus to the issues?
Today's rally is one of the efforts to highlight that Tibetans are suffering and they are in serious situation, so that the international community and Indian government can also take note of the situation, because Tibet issue is very much linked to India's national security. The longest border between Tibet and India has become now longest border between India and China. So all the border disputes, it connects to Tibet, and Tibet's forest is very much related to India and South Asia. Tibet has the 10 largest rivers of Asia flow from Tibet: Satluj, Indus River, Brahmaputra River, even the Ganges starts from Himalaya, but more on this side, and the Mekong River Mekong River and Salween River, all the way to Southeast Asia. Yellow River, Yangtze River, all flow from Tibet. And Tibet also has the 3rd largest reserve of ice after Antarctica and Arctic. And the glaciers in Tibet, in the Himalayan mountains, are melting very fast, and it affects the people downstream. Millions of people survive on fishery and agriculture downstream in India and Bangladesh, everywhere. Now, when there's a flood in the Tibetan area, when there's a lot of deforestation in the Tibetan area, it affects people downstream.
Yeah.
So that way Tibet is vital for Asia as a whole, and particularly South Asia and India. And also the Tibetan civilization that we talk about is very much the Indian Nalanda based Buddhism that was introduced by Indian scholars to Tibet in 7th and 8th century. So the Buddhism that we practice is very much of Indian origin. Now we have preserved it and we are promoting it around the world, and His Holiness Dalai Lama is the best ambassador that India can have, we have preserved the Buddhism of Indian based Buddhism, and now have revived it and then thriving around the world. That's what we want to preserve. Hence, India's national security as well as other vital interests are connected to the Tibet issue. This, I think, people in India ought to know. And also the Tibetan democracy that we practice as part of the Tibetan administration was part of the same constitution drafted by Dr. B.R. Ambedkarji. The secular democracy, we adopt secular democracy. Ahimsa that we adopt is very much a Gandhian notion of ahimsa. So in that sense, actually, what we have now is very much of a part of India. So when we say Tibet issue is important for the whole world, but also for India as well.
Yeah, it's more important because not only the geographical location, also the cultural, the cultural what we share.
Yes,
maybe that's what you were referring to. However, when we look at the issue of Tibet, and when we look at such extreme steps as self-immolation, which is being, as you said, reported, but when international communities or the organizations, do you think they are which organizations I would say are doing appropriate or sufficient? Are they doing sufficient? Or are they taking are they highlighting in terms of those issues worldwide, internationally? Are you getting support from the international community what ought to be?
One point before I speak about international community, for India, the holy places of Hindus, the Mount Kailash, Mount Mansarovar, and also the Ganges River, all are in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
So the god Shivaji has been our guest in Tibet for these many years. So now we are a guest of India, for which we are very grateful for the support we have been given by Indian government and Indian people. Now, as far as international community is concerned, as I said earlier, US Senate, European Parliament, France, Italy, they all have passed resolutions on the issue of Tibet and self-immolation.
But are they putting, are they conveying their message to the Chinese authorities and the government that there's enough, adequate steps are not being taken. They need to take more. They need to do more. Chinese authorities need to do correct. The course of actions what they are taking inside the Tibet.
Yes, the fact that resolutions are passed are a testament of their support, and particularly United Nations also, the UN Human Rights Commissioner has issued an unprecedented statement saying the self-immolation that is taking place in Tibet is because of repression or repressive policies of the Chinese government. And the United Nations is willing to send delegation to Tibet to investigate what is happening inside Tibet.
Can you tell us, since this 4-day campaign is on and a lot of Indian leaders are coming, but what the Tibetan people in India, how are they at the moment, living in India, and how are they being, are they feeling comfortable? Are they feeling, help? Are they getting the help? Are they getting the hope with which you have been, you have been struggling for freedom for so long? Are they getting, sufficient or enough support from the Indian?
Now, as far as Tibetans are concerned, Indian government and people of India has done the most for Tibetans, because largest number of Tibetans are in India, and the Tibetan administration is also based in India. The fact that India as a host has done so much for us, most of the Tibetan settlements, most of the Tibetan schools are subsidized by the Indian government. Because of India, we are able to stand on our own feet. So in that sense, we owe a lot to the government and people of India. So having said that, obviously, even though hum yahan mehman hai, we are maybe a little selfish in saying that perhaps Indian government could do a little more on political aspect as well. Okay. So that expectation is there. But having said that, India has done so much for us. And we can't be demanding things. We can only request and appeal.
एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेंगे. एक ब्रेक के बाद जो अभी इन्होंने बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात कही है कि बहुत कुछ किया है और उसके लिए शुक्रगुजार भी हैं. कह रहे हैं कि हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देते हैं भारत और भारत के लोगों को, भारत के सरकार को, लेकिन बहुत कुछ तो नहीं, हम मांग तो नहीं कर सकते हैं, लेकिन ये रिक्वेस्ट ज़रूर कर सकते हैं कि राजनीतिक तौर से पॉलिटिकली गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया कैन डू मोर एंड शुड डू मोर. एक छोटे से ब्रेक के बाद इस पर चर्चा करेंगे. घटनाचक्र में एक बार आपका फिर से स्वागत है. हम बात कर रहे हैं तिब्बतियन पीपल्स सॉलिडरिटी कैंपेन जो दिल्ली में 30 तारीख से लेकर 2 फरवरी तक जो चल रहा है, और इस कैंपेन के बाबत हम बात कर रहे हैं जो तिब्बत के इलेक्टेड पॉलिटिकल लीडर जो हैं डॉक्टर लोब्संग सांगे से बात कर रहे हैं. और उन्होंने जो बात कही, काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें उन्होंने साफ साफ जो स्थिति है तिब्बत की, जो चाइनीज़ जो गवर्नमेंट जो वहाँ पे जिस तरह से रिप्रेसिव, जैसे दमनकारी नीतियों के विरोध में जो उन्होंने बात कही, और साथ ही साथ जो तिब्बत की जो अभी मांग है आज़ादी की बात उन्होंने जो कही, और इन तमाम चीज़ों पे एक बात कही कि भारत से बहुत कुछ किया जा रहा है, लेकिन राजनीतिक तौर से पॉलिटिकली मोर कैन बी डन, मोर शुड बी डन. Doctor, would like to know, when you say politically, what exactly do you have in mind that the government of India or the people of India should, can do or should do?
Now, I think people of India should realize that in Tibet is vital for India's national security also, geopolitically, because, for example, the Simla Agreement was signed between British India and Tibet in 1914, and British representative was Sir McMahon. Hence the McMahon line, the border that you have now between Tibet and India now, which is being said as between China and India, was signed by Tibet. That is the border, de facto border now. So if McMahon line is the border, or is the preferred border, then we all should know that Tibet, who signed that treaty and made that border possible. And also, when Tibet was a separate nation, historically there was no contact whatsoever, and in sense, physical, geographical sense, between China and India. Now suddenly China has moved to Tibet, thereby has influence in Nepal, and has extended influence to Pakistan. And also now they are building a big seaport in Sri Lanka, and with neighboring South Asian countries. So this was never the case when Tibet was a separate nation. So Tibet was the buffer
state between India and China.
India and China. Now suddenly, with the Chinese coming to Tibet, suddenly there is a renewed new situation for India. And now from the reports, media reports, we read that Chinese government has already built 5 major military airfields.
Yep.
They're building one more. And they have brought railway line all the way to Lhasa. And they're bringing it to Sikkim and other places, Nepal and other places. So seaport in Pakistan, one being built in Sri Lanka. Attempt was made in Burma. The railway line all the way to borders. Highways are already built all the way to the borders of India. And airfields are already built. Hence,
there's a security
there is this security issue.
Concerns which...
Yes, which Indian people ought to know. Had Tibet being a buffer zone, that could not have taken place. So that is why for Indian people to know why Tibet is environmentally important, all the major rivers, forest, and also a lot of mineral resources in Tibet, gold, copper, uranium, mining taking places. And the damming of rivers is affecting the flow of river downstream. Some media reports that the rivers in the northeast area in Arunachal and all, it has even the Ladakh area, the level of river that has gone substantially down. Now why it's happening, we don't know for sure. But is it the diversion of water? Is it the damming of rivers? All these are important questions that we ought to explore. So in that sense, actually Tibet is vitally important. That Indian people ought to know. And also China says that Tibet is one of their core issues. If that is the case, then India should also accept Tibet as one of the core issues, all the more because of the reasons that I gave you.
Because of the reasons you have.
Yes.
And because of its own concern, not only the Tibet's, the support to the Tibet's cause to the, freedom. Also because of this tragic and geopolitical and cultural and environmental concerns. We are coming back to one more. There's a, these solidarity campaign. You have said Tibet is burning. Could you give us a little more, highlight the when you say Tibet is burning more, such Tibet आज जल रहा है. ये जो इस तरह के कैंपेन में जो स्थिति है वहाँ की, there's a real condition of the people, of the common people who are common Tibetan who are inside the Tibet. What are they actually today faced with, apart from the subjugation which has been done by the Chinese or government Chinese?
आज तक तिब्बत का स्थिति उतना अच्छा नहीं है, बहुत बुरा है. इसलिए तिब्बती लोग अभी जल रहा है, अपनी जान दे रहा है अपने फ्रीडम के लिए. So situation is very bad actually. So it's really sad that Tibetans have to give up their lives. Why? Because there is political repression. If you are caught with the picture of His Holiness Dalai Lama, you will go to jail. If you are caught with the copy of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you go to jail. You paste a poster on the wall, just one poster, or shout human rights in the street, you go to jail. When you have that kind of restriction, no freedom of speech and expression. So we can have a rally in the city of Delhi, but you cannot have protests by Tibetans inside Tibet. What kind of situation is that? Hence, Tibetans are saying, no matter how many times we protest, Tibetans protested in 87, 88, 89, 2006, 2007, 2008. All are arrested, tortured, some disappear, some die. Hence Tibetan is saying, if I get caught, I will be in prison longer, I will suffer longer. Instead, it's better for me to sacrifice myself by self-immolation. So that kind of desperation, frustration and determination by the Tibetan people.
But the one more thing, one is the political situation, and the when the people are facing such conditions, and there's also the economic condition. How do you describe the economic condition of the people who are living in Tibet?
Yeah, there is economic discrimination and marginalization. For example, 70% of the shops and enterprises in Lhasa, the capital city, are owned or run by Chinese. 70%. 50% of the Communist Party members are Chinese. Communist Party members, not just top leaders. Top leaders are mostly Chinese, even the Communist Party members. 40% of Tibetans with high school or college degrees are unemployed in their own homeland. Now, how would you feel? So, Chinese people have dominated the market in the urban areas. Fortunately, Tibetans are still majority in rural areas. Even in urban areas during winter at this time, because Tibet is so cold, majority of Chinese leave, they return home. So in winter, Tibet is Tibetan majority. But in the summer, Chinese are majority in urban areas, and Tibetans are still majority in the rural areas. So situation is quite grim.
A last question, we have running out of time, but still we'd like to, if you have any appeal to the world or to the Indian community.
India and the Indian people has done so much for us, and we are eternally grateful. I am born and brought up in India, educated in India. So in that sense, the political leadership that you see in the Tibetan community are very much of Indian origin. So success for Tibet means success for India. I hope and हम अनुरोध करते हैं कि भारतीय जनता हमारा साथ है और साथ रहे, और हम लोग सब जरूर तिब्बत वापस जाएंगे और ल्हासा में जाएंगे. तब मानसरोवर और कैलाश में जितने भी पिलग्रिम्स पधराएंगे उनको हम वेलकम करेंगे. शुक्रिया.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे स्टूडियो में आए, और हिंदुस्तान के अवाम, हिंदुस्तान के सरकार, हिंदुस्तान के जो तमाम जो राइट थिंकिंग या जिस तरह के भी जो नागरिक हैं, जिस तरह से उन्होंने समर्थन दिया है, वो समर्थन जारी रहे और तिब्बत को आज़ादी मिले, इस उम्मीद के साथ इस कार्यक्रम को यहीं समाप्त करते हैं. थैंक यू वेरी मच डॉक्टर लोब्संग फॉर कमिंग टू आवर स्टूडियो.
थैंक यू वेरी मच.
थैंक यू.
थैंक यू.